We are absolutely rocking and rolling on the Skymaster XL F-4 Phantom. Nez has been a huge help on this aircraft. Last video we got the wings completed, huge step. And in this video we're just moving on with the progress, with the wings, with the fuselage. Lots of things are going to get accomplished in this video. If you happen to be finding the channel for the first time, we build really cool aircraft here at the Lighter Side of RC, and there is playlists generally in most of my videos listed down below. So if you want to start this F4 build from the very beginning, check out the playlist down below. It starts off with the unboxing and goes through all of the steps completed so far up into this current video that you're finding right now. All right, so where we're starting off with this video is we want to get our equipment layout sorted out here in the front. So equipment layout starting off with our trays. We finished the last video, or part of the last video was the cockpit setup here. Now that's all done as far as the structure of the cockpit goes. So what we can do now is we can dismantle all of the cockpit pieces out of this aircraft because we have a good path forward on how everything is installed now. We'll come back to this later, obviously, but we need to get our trays sorted out next. So step one, dismantle these cockpits. All right, so we got the front cockpit out. It's actually very difficult to get the front cockpit out and pretty much impossible to get it out unless you drop the nose gear. So you have to open this up, get the nose gear out of the way. That allows you to drop the cockpit in and turn it and get it out. So little tip for you. But what I'm working on first here, I want to get our keyholes done for our missile mounts before we start thinking about mounting any equipment trays, so we don't have any interference issues. So all of the missiles, they're drilled essentially in the same kind of spot here. So we've got 2 holes done in the front side. They're all basically the same. So I did a couple things here. They're a little hard to line up right now because this fin needs to be removed in order for it to actually fit in the aircraft. So the back side of the front missile sits right there in that slot. So we're about 1 inch into there. So I kind of marked that out roughly. And then I came over here to the fuselage, and with that kind of sitting back where it needs to go, we're pretty much lined up on that panel line of the missile right there. So then took the missile and installed it because that's going to be as far back as we're going to go with that panel line lined up. And you can see there we've got a little bit of clearance on the front. So what that allowed me to do was get the missile lined up like this and kind of mark out our keyholes on the fuselage there. So if we install it like here, we'd be able to fit in there no problem, and then slide it back and essentially line the panel line up with that right there, which is going to fit everything perfectly. So yeah, so anyways, that's my rudimentary way of doing it, and I've marked those keyholes out on our receiver portions right there. Now on the front fuselage side, this is just fiberglass in here, so we may end up reinforcing that, I think. On the wing side here, which butts up to the back part of the fuselage, hard to show you, but they did put some wood blocking on these areas already in the actual wing. So if you look in the base there, there's a piece of wood here and a piece of wood kind of there. So we're going to do the exact same process here, get those keyholes done, but there already is backer installed. So we'll just use our Dremel bit. We'll use our 1/8 carbide bit, get the hole done, get our slot done, and get these missiles fit, see if we need to put some backer in there. All right, front missile mounts have been figured out, and yes, we do have to add some backing, but we've got our keyholes sorted out. We've got the ordnance marked as well too. Again, the spacing's a little bit different on the missiles, so we're kind of doing them for each section there. So all we do is we've got our keyholes already done in the fiberglass. Now we can glue a piece of wood on there, and then we'll do the exact same cutout on the piece of plywood that goes on there. So that will work good. So we'll get the plywood glued in place, and then we'll know exactly what kind of clearance we need for all of our trays. All right, and while we're mixing epoxy, I'm going to pull our engines out get a piece of plywood mounted to the tops of each of the engines, just so we've got a little bit more structure for our screws to screw into. So right now they're into like whatever plywood that is, 1/4 inch or 3/8 plywood. You know, if we add another layer of 1/4 inch on top, then at least we've got more structure. You know, my thinking behind that is this plane's going to be transported like that. You know, the weight of the engines is pulling down on those screws, so better to have a little bit extra support there. So we'll get those engines out and get a couple pieces of plywood glued in place. All right, so we got our blocks of wood cut here for our turbine mounts, and we'll get those high-soled and clamped in place. And we also have some pieces of G10 or fiberglass for our keyholes here. And what we'll do is we're going to get those glued in place and high-soled in place as well. So I'm probably going to tack these with some CA, and I've taped over top of the keyholes, so we're not going to get any interference. So probably tack those with CA and then just put some epoxy around it. So, all right, so we got all of our gluing done, and while we were here, I also glued in all of our tray mounts as well. So this is 3/4 inch ply pieces, 4 here for our main tray, and then we've got 2 on the sides here. The purpose of kind of having them like this is if we have any airlines coming down the side, we're going to put keepers in there, but we just want to make sure nothing goes into the actual wheel opening, so that kind of acts like a stop as well too. That's the whole point of it. So that stuff's all glued. We did a little bit of touch-ups on the top sides of like our cockpit mounts and the compressor mount because we had some extra glue mixed up. So we're going to leave that stuff to be and let it cure overnight. All right, it's been 24 hours and all of our glue is very dry, very cured. So we're going to re-drill these holes for the turbine mounts, get those guys mounted. Other thing we're doing is we're taking some of our through fittings here. These are our 4mm through fittings available on our website for Festo tubing. And we're going to install those guys right there. And that's just to help that tube come down. I'll probably put keepers on the tank here, and we'll run the tubes to the fuel pumps. Engines are back in. When we flip this over, we'll get them plugged back in. That's a big step accomplished. We got our through fittings glued to the former work there. All right, next thing with all of our blocks glued in here is we want to get our trays sorted out for this area. So my initial thinking is we're going to do this in 2 pieces. So first piece is going to be one big piece that kind of takes up this whole area. And then for our air portion, we're going to mount to here. So there may be one screw here, and then that'll come all the way across, and we'll have a couple fastening points to these blocks there. That's my thought with that. So I want to get these designed and finished first so we can get them painted, and then we can start working on the other items in the nose section here. All right, so we got our trays cut and shaped and everything. This tray right here, I added another piece on there. That's going to allow some support for that side. Whether we screwed or not, I'm not sure yet, but at least it'll support the air tray, if we want to call it that. So now that those guys are done, we're going to get these painted. And these guys, just sticking with the military scheme, we're going to keep it as primer gray. Now, once those are painted, we're going to get back onto our front fuselage piece here. So with our G10 materials or fiberglass plates installed here, we're going to flip this back over and we're going to get our keyholes dremeled through the fiberglass piece now, and the front missiles will have some extra support. All right, so next day, and we've got our trays just laid in place there. The gray is all cured, looks good. Now, one of the things I was thinking about for quite a while now is I want to make an air dam or a dam right here, more about a particulate FOD dam. So what I did was I designed a piece in my Tinkercad for my 3D printer, and it's currently printing. It's basically just going to make a little wall right here. And that's just to keep any crud that comes up from the wheel, keep that off the electronics. So I've just uploaded that into my Bamboo printer, and there's kind of a shot there of what it looks like. It's 80 millimeters long and 60 millimeters tall. Added a triangle, some screw down holes. So that's printing right now. It should be done in about 40 minutes. So now we're going to flip this fuselage section on the side. We're going to get our keyholes dremeled out. All right, so we got our missiles all fit and our keyholes done. on the fuselage side, so those worked out good, and happy with all that. So I'm going to take a little bit of thin CA, just put a drop on the threads to lock those in the correct position, and we also need to sand down our fin on our missile, this top one. So we'll just sand that off, and these guys are done. All right, so next thing I'm going to do in preparation for our front section here is pull our gear out. Now when we pull this gear out, we are installing our matrix landing gear. So for this aircraft, the owner ordered a matrix, so this is done by Matrix Machine Co., I think, and this is a very common thing. We also use this on our other F-4s, the smaller ones that we did, and essentially what the benefit with this leg is it's got an air nipple right there, and basically that air nipple allows you to extend the gear before takeoff. So one of the things about the full-scale F-4 is when it comes in for a landing, the gear compresses like this, and it brings the nose of the aircraft down. So landing with this is amazing. The stock gear is always fully extended, so when you land like that, the plane has a nose-up attitude, and it's fine, but this is a fairly pricey upgrade, but it is definitely a cool upgrade. So usually what happens is you taxi out with the gear down like this. So the way you generally program this in the radio is flaps up or regular flying mode. Leg is not pressurized, so like this. You taxi out, you go to takeoff flaps, boom, that pressurizes, and then on full flaps, the leg also depressurizes. So essentially when you're flying, this leg's going to be extended. So you take off, the leg's up like this, you raise your gear, and you go to regular flying mode. Then what happens is when you go for your landing, you're going to go to takeoff flaps first. That makes sure the leg's pressurized. You drop your gear. Then when you go to full flaps, the leg stays extended, but it is unpressurized. Then as soon as you touch down, boom, the leg compresses, and you taxi back with the leg squished down. If you go to takeoff flaps again, boom, leg will pressurize. All right, 40 minutes later, our little piece printed, so that is going to sit right like that on the main plate, and we can screw that down. You could also glue that down, but I guess it's nice to have that removable, and I made 3 little screw holes there as well too, so that should be perfect. We printed that out of PETG carbon fiber, just so you're aware, so it's fairly heat resistant, and beautiful finish on this stuff as well. So that's done. Okay, so some considerations with this matrix landing gear. Now, the matrix landing gear is actually nice. It's actually more scale than the stock one. So you've got that piece on there as well. You've got this guy on here. So some cool little additions on the matrix gear. It's also a little bit beefier as well too. Not that that really matters, but the main shaft going in and out is thicker. And just for reference here, so 14 millimeters on the stock one, 15.9, 16 on the matrix one. A little bit beefier all throughout the leg here. And first order of business for our brand new drill press here at the shop is drilling out our leg. So the stock hole in the leg is 10 millimeters, the stock shaft is 10 millimeters, and this hole is drilled out to 9 millimeters-ish, so it does not fit in the leg. Fortunately, we've got a 10 millimeter drill bit, which is the correct size for this. So we're gonna get this all queued up and drill out our leg. All right, guys, so we got our leg all switched over. Now I've taken a piece of Skymaster tubing. I'm using the Skymaster tubing because it's the thickest wall, smallest opening tubing, so it really fits on the nipples really well, and installed that on our leg extension and safety wired that one because it's going to be constantly moving. So leg is essentially ready to go. We got our servo all set up, we flipped the arm around, that's all done as well too. So this leg is basically good to go back in the aircraft. All right, in preparation to put the gear back in, we put some spiral wrap on our airline. I'm not sure where this is going to get routed yet, but I just put a long piece on there, about 6 to 8 inches. And also put a piece of spiral wrap on our front lights here on the door, and put a couple drops of CA on each of the wire connectors just to provide some nice solid contact there instead of just relying on the solder joint to keep those fastened. So that stuff's all done. We've got those things routed and we should be good. I think those will stay in that area. It was working properly before. We could also run the light wires through there, but I'd rather have them through here. I think that's going to be better. So anyways, we're going to put the gear back in and we'll see how everything fits. All right, nose wheels all mounted, installed. Had to modify our activation arm here a little bit. It was way too long, so the gear wasn't retracting all the way. Now we also had to, we also had to cut out some holes in our door. So the scale door has a couple indents here. I'm assuming for the gear, we needed bigger holes because the way this gear is sitting, it is fully extended. We've confirmed that, it's centered, and these are the holes that we needed to add to allow this door to close. Without them, the door sits kind of like that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to fill these areas with some quick set epoxy, and we'll sand it out nicely, paint it white so it'll look like sort of like scale little indents, sort of like this guy, but obviously a little bit more obvious. All right, so we got everything plumbed for our turbines. I'm just waiting to print some holders for our 3mm or 4mm line here. So we've got our feed lines coming to our pumps from our UATs. We've got the feed lines from the main tank going to the UATs as well. And everything has been tie wired. So we've got our lines done up on both of the UATs. We have some keepers installed there just to make it look pretty. And that stuff is done. The only thing left to attach to our UATs is our fill lines. And I'm still undecided whether I'm going to put the fill line here or at the front. Probably in the front, most likely, but we'll see. And once our things are printed, our holders are printed, then I will install our lines here. Those are just going to be CA'd to the top of the tank, and they're going to come through our through fitting. And that will be the turbine plumbing almost complete. All right, so a little while later, and our glue that we put in here is all cured. This is quick cure methyl acrylate based epoxy, or 2-part glue. So that's all cured and everything closes beautifully now. So that's good, that's done. And while we were waiting on the glue, we got everything plumbed to our turbines. So our line comes back through our keepers, goes through our fuel filters. Now these are not the fuel filters that come with the Zykoy turbines. I don't use those ones, the Festo plastic ones. These are Swiwin ones. These are listed on our website. So those are installed. And I've also got a 90-degree Festo line right here. And the reason for that is our on-off valves, if I did a straight line, it kind of starts to come towards the back of the turbine, and I didn't want that. So there's a 90-degree Festo coming straight out, and that line wraps around the turbine and plugs in to the fuel port, exactly the same thing on that side. So all of our plumbing to the turbines themselves is complete. So it is now time to flip this fuselage over and start to get prepared to get our wiring completed. Now we do still need to mount the smoke pump. Not sure where we're going to mount that. That's not super important right now. We also have to mount our smoke nozzles. Again, not super important right now to get those guys done. So we're just going to leave that stuff for now, and we're going to focus on the wiring and the front part of our fuselage. So we're going to get this flipped over on our Lukey stand. All right, so just figuring out our layout here. Now we have just enough room to mount the Central Box 400 in this area. So that worked out very well, quite lucky. And we're very tight on our little wall that we made there, but that'll just work. And that's perfect. So what I'm looking for here is I want to know the position of this so I can figure out all of our lines, right? So, and this gives us a little bit of room to mount some other stuff, and it'll work out good. As we've planned, all of our airline stuff is going to go on the side. Probably have our fail-safe sequencer on that side, lighting controller somewhere in here. The other thing that I like about this is I can tuck all of our excess wires underneath this board and just have them coming out and plug in, so we can have some excess but also hide the excess. I'm a big fan of that. So we've got the fuselage flipped over, and I'm just going to get our wing wiring and tubing all figured out here. So I've unwrapped the tubes, and we can get our tubes done up. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the tubes come to a Y, so we'll have, or a T, so we'll have one side, the other side, come to a Festo T, and then back. All right, and there is our airline set up here coming, that's going to come through those two holes we have in the fuselage. So I'm going to get all of our ends installed on these guys. I think I'm also going to put a piece of shrink tube on this section here as well too, just because that comes in between the two UATs. So it'd be nice just to have that nice and clean for that little section right there. All right, so we got our air leads installed there. Zip tied them to the left UAT there, so now it's nice and solid and those aren't going to slip around anywhere. And then that's what they look like on the receiving side. So now we'll do our wing connectors up, which is exciting. All right, so we got our wire leads done up now. Put shrink tube on the first section. Again, when it goes through that hole in the fuselage, it's carbon fiber, so you want to protect the wires going through that. So those are done up. We have our two, our flap and aileron leads. And then what I did with our lights is I paired them together right about here, and then just one lead comes out. Because the leads on the wings or the lights on the wings are going to be the same. They're just going to be solid or flashing red and green. All right, and there's our mess coming from the back end. So we've got all of our wires from our wings and our back end coming to the center section. All these leads here are our air lines and light wires. All the servo wires here are the ones from our wings and our back end. So the ones with the servo leads already on them are from the wings. The ones with all the little labels on them with the masking tape are the ones from the back end. So we're going to get all those ends installed right now. All right, guys, we are ready to join our fuselage. So I put our two air tanks right here. There's a nice big space underneath the intakes. So we stuck those air tanks there. We've got our fill line installed here. Everything's tie wired, and we've got a nice metal T in there, and everything's ready to join and come forward. So that's what it looks like. Not too bad as far as the bundle goes, but looks good. So next thing we're going to do is we are going to get that front part of the fuselage mounted up here. We've got 4 big M6 bolts holding it there, and there's also 2 that go in the side in the intake. So I need to figure out what those guys are, probably M3s or something, but we'll get that stuff sorted out as well and get this fuselage bolted together. All right, guys, nose is attached. Obviously, we use lots of Loctite on our bolts. Everything went together very nicely. Just have the wires and cables and everything kind of organized here out of the way. Doing some last minute gluing, so putting an extra piece across there so we don't get any wires that tuck into the nose gear. What else did I do? Oh, also on the front light here on the nose door, we'll call it. I'm just using some shoe goop and putting some G10 backers on there. Reason for that is the positive of this side and the negative of the other side, if they touch the leg, they are contacting at the same time. Of course, the leg is metal, so that would not be a good thing. So that's just as protecting the wire leads. And that's pretty much it for tonight. We're going to leave that stuff be, let it glue, let it dry, let it do its thing. And we will resume our organizing tomorrow. All right, we're back at her. Everything's nice and cured. So we've got our tray just resting in place. The Central Box 400 has been bolted down. We've got our deflector here bolted down, and just kind of working on general layout and getting some thoughts behind equipment layout. Now, one thing that is nice about the CB400 is if you're stuck for space, which in this aircraft we sort of are, you can just put your Cortex right on top, which is exactly what we're going to do. So the Cortex is going to sit right in this area here, nice and protected by that, right on the center line of the aircraft, so that's good. Air valves for the gear and everything, we don't necessarily need to have them up here. we can also have them back here because we've got room now. So anyways, we've got room to play with on that side, which is nice. So I'm just kind of getting things placed in there just to get some ideas on layout. All right, so now with our plan in place, we can start laying out our equipment. We're going to start off with our Cortex, going to get that installed. And pretty sure that we're going to just put our air valves in this location here. One of the nice things about having the air valves in this location is we can run all of our lines on the side of the fuselage here in keepers. Now, we've got the front gear and front door lines coming here, and we've got the ones coming from the back end. So what we'll do is we'll bring those to a T in this location here, and then we'll have our lead coming down, going to our appropriate valves. So it's going to be a nice layout here. We'll have a nice layout on the side of the fuselage, all visible, all serviceable, all easy to access. The one for the nose, that may be the only one that we run on this other side here, just because of position and everything. I don't necessarily want to run that all the way around just to have a valve on that side. No big deal with that. All right, so we got our board all laid out. Everything looks really good. I'm happy with it. It's also nice to have some space. We don't have to jam a whole bunch of equipment into this area. Part of that reason is because so much of it is in the midsection there. So that's great. It's nice to have it spaced out. We've got everything labeled. We've got all of our twists done. Everything's plugged in where it needs to go. So we've got all of our valves labeled. So we've got doors, gear, those guys go to the Zykoy sequencer. We've got brake, being wheel brakes. We've got chute and nose. It's also nice to have these guys on the side that they plug into, and also our leads can come to this side as well. So that worked out really well. And while we had our label maker out, we labeled our wing connectors. I like to do this in case you ever want to plug this in and operate, or you know which servo is which. So now that this stuff's laid out, it's time to get our airlines kind of sorted out and mounted in the side of the fuselage. Okay, so we got our initial plumbing done for our lines here. Now this is our gear up down, our doors open close. We've got the T's, and those lines here are going to come to our valves. This line is our air supply line, and then we've got our brake line, which is right here. Now our air supply line, we're going to have those come to T's and feed everything as well. Now one of the things that I like to do in this type of setup is on our gear down side, then our wheel brakes get air. So that's what I like to do there. And the other thing we can do is our chute could also get air only when the gear is down, but really isn't totally necessary because we've got a lot of logic built in where the chute won't deploy unless certain conditions are met. So that's how our brake's going to get fed. So that black line is going to come here, which is our output. This line is going to tee into our other ones there as well. So we'll get that stuff laid out. But we do need to get our Zykoy sequencer here programmed. So you'll need a data terminal if you're programming one of these things. It can be one of the old-fashioned big ones, one of the new little data terminals, but we're going to get this thing programmed. All right, so a little tip for the Zykoy users out there. In a twin setup like this, if you're using the telemetry sensor, what's going to happen is both telemetry sensors are going to read essentially the same turbine, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. There's no differentiation between left turbine, right turbine. So what you have to do is you have to go in and you have to change the pump factor on the sensor, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So in order to do this, you need a Y cable like this. This is the Y cable that we use for all of our binding and everything. You're going to plug your telemetry sensor into one side of the Y cable. You're going to plug one of your data screens into the other side of the Y cable, and this side here we're adding a battery. Obviously this can vary. So we'll plug our battery in this side, paying attention to polarity, and this is what comes up on the screen. So we've got Jetty telemetry system. That's the default for these sensors, so you can change the telemetry system type. You don't worry about fuel tank capacity here. Pump factor, so this comes default to 400, and this one here we're going to change it to 401. So that'll be our right turbine as an example. So 400, the other sensor will be our left turbine. this will be our right turbine. And then we just go in here. Don't need to worry about all this other stuff. And save changes. So the point of doing that is now when we get our telemetry fed to the radio, we can also rename them left turbine, right turbine, but the radio will be able to pick up the different signals from one sensor compared to the other sensor. All right, so we got our Cortex programmed. I did do a video not too long ago about just programming the Cortex gyro with a central box. There's a playlist on my channel, it's techs or tips or something like that. That's where it's located. So if you're curious on how to program a central box with a Cortex and a Jetty system, that's where you find that answer. Okay, so we've got our airline run here for our brake. We've got our feed lines for our different items. Those are going to go up to our feed line area. And I think this tray is basically ready to install. All right, so there's a shot of the inside before we lay our trays in. So we've got our lighting wire coming this way. I suspect we're going to put our lighting controller on that side. We've got kind of our airlines and stuff tucked up above. Our servo leads are looped right there, so we can pull those and plug them into our central box. So I think we are ready to go. Now, if we do have to fish anything else underneath here, wherever we need to go, we can use our fishing wires and get those done, but I'd like to get this tray bolted down so we don't have any pinch points here. So we'll get the tray installed and then we'll get it screwed down, and hopefully that's the last time. All right, so we're hooking up the compressor to the air system. The air system is essentially done with the addition of the fill valve. So when we're hooking up an air compressor, the V-Speak air compressor, we use a section of Teflon line. So if the pump is here, Teflon line comes out of the pump. Then we put a 4mm one-way Festo valve. And what this does is this prevents backfeeding to the pump. Now, it's a bit of an interesting way to do things. Now, the reason I do it this way is it provides a just in case or a fail safe. So if the pump is to fail, now we have seen these pumps fail in a situation where there's too many air tanks in an aircraft and the pump's on for too long and it overheats. So that's the reason we put the one-way valve in there. So the pressure readout, the telemetry from the pump is only reading the pressure between the pump and that one-way valve. The Zycoi fail-safe sequencer is telling you your telemetry PSI pressure in the actual system. So that's why we do it that way. So if the pump is to fail, the air pressure in the system doesn't leak back through the pump. So it's just a bit of a fail-safe, and that's why it's done. And then we've got a 4mm to 3mm Festo adapter, and then our Festo line that we've got stuff plumbed with basically plugs right into there. All right, and there's our compressor plumbed into the system. Pretty straightforward, so exactly as I described here, Teflon line, one-way valve, 3/4 reducer, and then right off of that we've got a T, and that T feeds our nose and our chute. You got to remember with an air system, it's all plumbed together in the supply, right? So that line comes to a T here, that T goes back to our air tanks, the other side of the T comes over, feeds our air stuff over here. There's another T right there. That line goes forward, goes to this blue line, which is going to be our fill valve at the front of the aircraft. So everything's kind of plumbed together in one universal continuous system. All right, plane is flipped back over and we're starting to work on the remaining items in the midsection, back section of the aircraft. So we're getting our telemetry items set up here for the Zycoi turbines. So we've got our telemetry module, and we need to make up Y cables for each of the turbines. So this plugs into the data port. One lead goes to the telemetry unit. The other lead is what feeds the little GSU screens mounted in the aircraft. All right, smoke system is all installed, so I'll show you guys the path here. So we've got our pump, power box pump mounted right there. This is the jet powered or high powered one or high flow one. So we've got one input. That input comes to this Y fitting right here, the Festo Y, and this side of the Festo Y goes to the tank. This side is going to be the fill side, so that side there is going to go forward, and that's going to be our fill for our smoke system. So when you fill it, the fluid's coming down here into the tank, and then the pump is sucking on this side. These two are the outputs. That goes to a 6 to 4 millimeter Festo adapter, and those are 4 millimeter Festo lines all the way back to our turbine to the smoke stick. So these smoke sticks here, they are the ones obviously that mount underneath the straps. Great clean way to mount this. So that's straightforward, nice smoke setup, very simple. The lines for the Powerbox smoke pump have been run forward. Awesome. Last thing to do in this section is to run our throttle cable forward. We need to make those guys up. And then also we are going to have our battery cable here, which we kind of need to get sorted out as well too. So those are the last two things in this area. Otherwise, this area is complete. All right, F4 is flipped back over again. Ran our smoke and fuel lines on the other side. Just ran those forward, used keepers all the way to the front. You can see the fuel side there, all the way to the front. So that stuff is here. We've got our turbine items and our smoke pump items right there. So those are ready to be plugged in. And I think the next thing we're going to finish up here is getting our items plugged into our central box. So now that we pretty much have everything done except a couple small things like nose wheel and things, we can get all that stuff plugged in. And then we got to start thinking about power leads going from the turbines forward and how we're going to share everything. So on this aircraft, it's going to be a very simple setup that we've used on numerous large aircraft exactly like this. So what we do is we use 4 3-cell lipos. They're going to be exactly the same all the way across the board. So you're using something like a 3-cell 4,000 milliamp lipo times 4. So there's going to be 2 for the central box, 2 for the turbines. Now the central box is going to supply power to the lighting system and certain other things through the BEC, the BECs. Now the BECs are these guys right here. So essentially you supply this with 3-cell lipo. We say to the central box, okay, we want to regulate this down to 8.2 or 8.4 volts. So all of the outputs there, the servo outputs, get 8 whatever volts. And the BEC outputs, if you're setting it to the simple setting or basic setting, they get the same output. So we can have our afterburner lights plugged into this side, and we can have our lighting system and whatever else plugged into this side. Our compressor is going to share one of the turbine batteries. So as those leads come forward, we will just tie that in to the turbine power supply here. Again, done this on numerous occasions and it works just perfectly. Zykoy turbines so far have had 0 issue sharing the compressor. So we've had the compressor running while the turbine's running, full throttle, etc., works perfect. So what I do now is I turn my radio on, which is going to have the master list of all the channels, and we just plug those channels in as we go through them. All right, guys, in the latter part of this video, you may have noticed my mood changed a little bit. And I don't know how much of this is going to make it in the video, but you know, I share the good and the bad with you guys, and got a phone call today from a fellow down in Texas, and he let me know that Joey Tamas passed away this morning. I'm recording this on September 2nd. That's when this video is the last part of this video was recorded. And yeah, so I got that news today. Most people didn't know that he was sick, but that's one of the testaments as well too that a lot of people talked about on Facebook. I saw in Pablo's post that he was in good spirits and most people had no idea that he was sick. I didn't know him super well, Obviously, we're very far apart from each other distance-wise, but we chatted quite a bit from a professional standpoint, and he built for me in the past year quite a few pipes. And one of the things that really stood out to me was just last week he shipped me a pipe for the Picaro 2.0. So we were putting a large engine in the Picaro 2.0, and one of the last messages that I got from Joe was sent you the 2-meter Picaro pipe. Should be able just to open the back former and you're good. Pipe is rated for a 250. Thank you, sir. And I asked Joe to send me some stickers because he just did up his logo. And it was really stinking cool. And it really blows my hair back that, you know, he was still building pipes a couple weeks ago. And he's no longer with us. So if you knew him, my condolences go out to you, to the Tamis family as well too. So sorry to end the video on a somber tone. We accomplished a lot on the F-4. I hope that next video we can wrap it up. I don't know. There's lots of little details left. I had hoped to be further along by the end of today, but unfortunately that's the way things go. As always, the plane is very impressive. It's huge, and looking forward to getting the Carf one, which is like 4 feet longer than this one. But thanks guys for watching the videos. If you're part of the model airplane, model aviation hobby, it's a small hobby, it's a small world, and it's always sad when we lose another fellow flyer. This video will be released after we resume our live streams here at the shop for the lighter side of RC After Dark. September 8th-ish, whatever the next Saturday is when we're going to start getting back on schedule for the winter for our live streams every 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. If you're not familiar with what the lighter side of RC After Dark is, it's a completely separate channel. And we do live streams here from the shop for about 2 hours during the winter every 2 weeks. I love it because I get to interact with you guys if you're on the live stream at the same time. When this video airs, I think we'll be at Jet Power. I think it's the Saturday we're at Jet Power, so looking forward to Jet Power. And we will have a summary video, maybe some more from Jet Power as well too. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.